Thanksgiving has always been a weird holiday for my family. For most people, it's about food and gratitude and maybe tolerating a politically incorrect uncle for a few hours. But in my family, it's a performance, an audition, a status competition disguised as mashed potatoes and forced smiles. My name's Kyle, I'm 36, and up until a few years ago, I used to try and play along. I'd show up on time, bring a thoughtful dish, sit where I was told, ask about people's kids, nod politely while someone made passive-aggressive remarks about my life. And then I'd leave early, stomach twisted into knots, wondering why I bothered. But this year was different. The shift started slow, like most family rot does. Not all at once. It's not like someone yelled at me or threw a plate. It was quieter than that. Subtler. It started with my cousin Ashley's wedding 3 years ago. She invited everyone except me and said it was because of limited seating. But I saw the photos afterward. My seat wasn't limited, it was replaced. Replaced by someone's new boyfriend, by the coworker who felt like family, by the fitness coach she met on a retreat and suddenly couldn't live without. I didn't say anything, just clicked through the pictures like everyone else, pretending it didn't sting. I had gotten divorced the year before that, and ever since, I noticed my seat at the metaphorical table, maybe even the literal one, was slowly getting pushed farther and farther toward the edge. My Aunt Margaret was the ringleader of it all. She has this veneer of class, you know the type. Pearls and pastel blazers. A voice that never raises but always cuts. She prides herself on being the family's moral compass, the matriarch ever since my grandma passed. She sends these long, detailed group texts about family events, who's bringing what time to arrive, dress codes, even links to Pinterest boards for theme inspiration. That kind of woman. She and I used to be close when I was a kid. She'd let me sit beside her and eat the first roll out of the basket before dinner. She taught me how to fold napkins into little fans. She used to call me her quiet night because I always noticed when she was overwhelmed and helped without saying a word. But something shifted when I hit adulthood. I didn't follow the script. I didn't marry someone from the neighborhood. I didn't get a job in the family business. I didn't have 2.5 kids by 30. And when my marriage ended after just 3 years, no scandal, just quiet growing apart. Well, that was the final nail. I became a cautionary tale. The group chat was called Fam Bam Feast 2025. I was in it, technically, though most of the texts felt like they were aimed around me rather than to me. It was always Ashley, Aunt Margaret, and my sister Colleen bouncing ideas back and forth. Matching sweaters. Holiday crafts for the kids. Who was bringing the gluten-free stuffing? I'd reply occasionally, I can bring wine, I can help clean up, but most of the time, no one would even acknowledge it. I became the background noise of the conversation. Until last week. It was late at night when I saw the message come through. Aunt Margaret. Her signature style. Perfect punctuation, 0 emojis. Hi everyone. Just a reminder that this year's Thanksgiving will be drama-free, classy, and family-forward. I'd like to kindly ask that we avoid any subjects or guests that might stir tension. That means no politics, no failure stories, and please, no divorced people at the table this year. Let's keep the energy elevated. Thank you. A thumbs-up emoji came through a second later from my sister. Then a heart from Ashley. That's when I noticed. The message had been sent to a new group chat. One I wasn't in. One I only saw because my cousin Jonah screenshot it and forwarded it to me with a single line, "Bro, WTF." I stared at it for a long time. That last line hit harder than it should have. No divorced people at the table. Like I was contagious. Like I was going to infect the turkey with the scent of heartbreak. I didn't respond. Not to Jonah, not to the group chat, not to anyone. I didn't lash out or ask for an explanation. I didn't confront Margaret or beg for inclusion. I just sat there on my couch in silence, watching the little bubbles of conversation float on without me. Colleen suggesting a local harpist. Ashley asking if everyone was okay with a champagne beige color scheme. Someone suggested hiring a photographer just to elevate the experience. And through all of it, not one person said my name. Not even to question my absence. And you know what? That silence told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't just that I wasn't welcome this year. It's that they didn't want me ever again. I had become too inconvenient. Too divorced. Too quiet. Too me. But here's the thing no one in that group chat remembered. I wasn't just some sad guy in sweatpants licking his wounds on a Thursday afternoon. I had done well for myself since the divorce. Quietly. Deliberately. I'd started a consulting firm 2 years ago, small at first, just me and a laptop, but it had taken off faster than I expected. Tech optimization for legacy nonprofits. Boring on paper, gold in practice. Last quarter alone, I cleared mid-six figures. I don't say that to brag. I say it because I never told anyone in my family. Not because I was hiding it, but because no one ever asked. They were too busy planning beige Thanksgivings and comparing Instagram followers. That silence gave me time to think. And when Jonah mentioned that everyone in the family had RSVP'd, yes, to the annual downtown charity gala the Saturday after Thanksgiving, the one Aunt Margaret always called the social event of the season, an idea started to form. A quiet, dangerous, delicious idea. I asked Jonah for the details. Who was going? Which organization was hosting? How the seating worked? Then I made a phone call. Then another. Then a wire transfer. I didn't tell a soul. Not even Jonah. Some things are better when they unfold in real time, right in front of people who thought they knew exactly where they stood in the world. Because this year, they didn't want drama at the Thanksgiving table. So I took the table away. I kept replaying that group chat message in my head. No drama, no failures, no divorced people at Thanksgiving. That was the moment something inside me clicked. Not snapped. Snapping is loud, violent. This was quieter. Something colder. I wasn't angry in the traditional sense. It was more like a door closed and locked behind me, and I realized I never wanted to walk back through it anyway. For the next few days, I didn't say a word to anyone. No texts. No passive-aggressive social media posts. Nothing. But I paid attention. Every time Aunt Margaret posted about the gala, I noted the time, the tone, the names she tagged. I started tracking how many people from my family were attending. Jonah said it was nearly everyone. Colleen and her husband. Ashley and her whole Smug Pilates crew. Aunt Margaret herself was on the planning committee this year and had bragged in her Sunday church group email that she'd secured a VIP table near the front stage for her family. A VIP table. She loved saying that. VIP. Like it was a reflection of moral superiority. As if having a white tablecloth and better hors d'oeuvres proved something about her soul. It made me sick to my stomach in the way only deep familiarity can. Like I could smell the perfume she wore when she said it. I could picture the way she'd touch her pearls absent-mindedly, a fake laugh ready to launch. I hadn't gone to the gala in years, but I knew the venue, knew the organizers. I even remembered the old woman who ran the seating chart. Her name was Gwen, and she'd been working events since before I hit puberty. Always sharp, always in control, always a sucker for a good underdog story. So I called her, told her I wanted to make a donation. Told her I wanted to stay anonymous. Told her I'd like to purchase every single VIP table, all 12 of them. And if possible, could she please place certain names on the general admission waitlist? Gwen hesitated at first. That's a lot of tables, sweetheart, she said. That's nearly a quarter of the floor. I know, I replied. That's the idea. It was the tone in my voice that convinced her. Not arrogance, not pettiness, but something deeper. Resigned, maybe. Determined. I gave her the names. Ashley, Colleen, Aunt Margaret, her husband, Jonah's mom and dad, 3 cousins, their spouses, all the ones who like to claim blood is thicker than water right before they shut me out. She didn't ask for details. She just said, well, if it's for charity, and took down everything I said. The wire transfer went through that afternoon. That should have been the end of it. A clean, elegant revenge. They'd show up, realize they were seated in the back. Maybe not get in at all. I'd sit near the stage, sipping champagne in silence, watching their faces twist as they processed it. But life has a way of twisting the knife before you get to pull it out. Because in the days that followed, before the gala even arrived, things got worse. It started with Colleen's birthday dinner. I wasn't invited. Again, not officially excluded, just never told. It wasn't until I saw a photo of the cake on Instagram, tagged with the location of a fancy seafood place downtown, that I even realized it had happened. 12 people. Smiling faces. Candles and oysters and wine. Ashley captioned it. The most genuine people always find each other. I stared at that photo for a long time. Tried to imagine the version of reality where I had just forgotten. I wasn't told. But I hadn't. I knew what this was. A slow erase. A methodical reshaping of family into something where I was no longer welcome. A new story written over the old one. One where Kyle, the divorced cousin, the outlier, the disappointment, just didn't exist anymore. That week, I ran into Aunt Margaret at the grocery store. She was standing by the organic produce, inspecting bell peppers like they might hold state secrets. I considered walking the other way, but she saw me before I could turn. Her smile was immediate, dazzling, performative, perfect. "Kyle," she trilled. "How are you, sweetheart?" "Sweetheart." I blinked. "I'm fine. We missed you at Colleen's dinner," she said, placing a pepper delicately into her cart. "But I suppose you've been so busy lately." There was a pause. She looked me over like she was checking for damage. "Still doing that digital thing?" "Consulting," I replied. "Yeah, it's going really well." I heard from someone that you moved into a new apartment." "Penthouse, actually," I said without thinking. "Downtown, near the riverfront." Her eyebrows rose for a split second. Just a flicker, but I saw it. "Well," she said, recovering. "That's nice. Must be cozy." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Anyway, I hope you'll be watching the live stream for the gala. Our table's supposed to be front row." I tilted my head. "Front row?" "Oh yes," she said breezily. "We always are." That word again. Always. Like it was a birthright. Like being seated at the front of a charity gala was hereditary. I smiled. Not sarcastically. Not cruelly. Just smiled. "I'm sure you'll be close," I said. "As close as possible." She gave a confused little laugh. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. That was the last time I saw her before everything exploded. A few days later, the breaking point came in the form of an email. A family-wide newsletter from Aunt Margaret. She liked to send one each holiday season. Recipes. Updates. Sometimes prayer requests. But this one felt different. Like a curtain being pulled back on how she really saw me. Subject line: "Keeping our family strong, a Thanksgiving message." I didn't open it right away. I waited until I was home. Alone. Then I read it in full. The letter started like usual: gratitude, blessings, reflections on the past year. Then it turned sharp. "In times like these," she wrote, "we must protect our family from influences that drain our energy. That includes people who walk away from their commitments and expect us to celebrate their poor decisions. Divorce is not bravery. Failure is not noble. And isolation is not a sign of strength." My name wasn't in it, but it was all about me. She signed off with a Bible quote. Something about unity. I don't remember which one. I stared at the screen for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I thought about replying. Thought about sending a link to an article on empathy. Thought about forwarding the letter to Colleen with a simple "seriously." But I didn't. I closed the email. Closed my laptop. Then I poured a drink. Sat in the dark. And for the first time in years, I let myself feel it. The grief of being cut out. Not for anything I did, but for who I was. And then I felt something else. Something colder. Something sharper. I was done waiting to be invited in. The next day, I doubled the donation to the charity gala. Told Gwen I wanted every name on that list confirmed off the VIP tables, moved far to the back, or off the list entirely. General admission was full, so the overflow policy would kick in. Waitlist only. First come, first serve. No guarantees. She warned me it might cause some confusion. I told her confusion was fine. Confusion was the point. I even bought myself a tux. Not rented. Bought. It had been years since I'd worn one, but I figured if I was going to make an entrance, I might as well do it right. I picked a black-on-black ensemble with subtle satin trim. Understated. Elegant. Ruthless. When I looked in the mirror that night, I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because I finally looked like someone who belonged. The gala was only 2 days away. There's a strange kind of silence that comes after betrayal. Not the kind where everything stops, but the kind where the world keeps spinning and you just don't. You hear the sounds of life moving on. You watch people laugh in public. You see families post throwback photos with #thankful and #blessed, and you realize you're the ghost in their narrative. You've been written out of the story before you even knew the page had turned. The day after that newsletter, the one where Aunt Margaret compared me to a disease without saying my name, I went for a long walk by the river. I didn't take my phone. Didn't bring headphones. Just walked. It was gray and windy. The kind of weather that scrapes your skin and makes you feel like the world itself wants to spit you out. I liked it. For a long time, I tried to pretend their rejection didn't bother me, that I was above it. But walking past families with strollers and couples with matching scarves, it hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of being the one who always made room for other people's comfort. Tired of explaining my absence in rooms I was never truly invited into. Tired of pretending I didn't miss what I thought we had. I ended up at a small bench near the edge of the water. Sat there until my fingers went numb. I kept replaying the last few years. The excuses I made. The way I'd tell myself they just forgot, or they didn't mean it like that, or maybe I should have tried harder to be part of things. I blamed myself. For being quiet. For being different. For being divorced. But that's the lie they fed me. That not being what they expected meant I had failed. I had to start unlearning that. I didn't go back to my apartment that night. I checked into a small hotel across town instead. Just a few nights. I needed a space that didn't carry the weight of memory. A place where the air didn't feel full of reminders. That hotel became my cocoon. I ordered room service. Took long showers. Read books I had been putting off. I stayed quiet. Still. Let myself unravel a little. It was Jonah who reached out first. He texted the next morning. No fluff. No emojis. Saw the newsletter. That was low. I didn't reply right away. I appreciated the gesture, but I didn't want to get dragged into another conversation about how that's just how Aunt Margaret is, or how, she didn't mean it like that. I didn't want comfort. I wanted clarity. And space. 3 hours later, he sent another message. You okay? This time I replied. Not really. But I will be. And I meant it. The thing about hitting rock bottom is that you stop worrying about slipping further. There's a kind of brutal freedom in it. You don't have to perform anymore. Don't have to pretend you're waiting to be invited, included, saved. I had nothing left to lose with them. And for the first time in years, I felt something that looked a lot like power. When I got back to my apartment a few days later, I started making small changes. I deleted the Fam Bam Feast group chat. Not just muted, gone. I unfollowed people I hadn't spoken to in months. I blocked a few too. Not out of spite. Out of preservation. If they weren't willing to see me, they didn't deserve access to me. I cleaned my apartment from top to bottom. Donated half my closet. Rearranged the furniture. Got rid of the couch my ex-wife had picked out back when we still thought matching throw pillows would fix our distance. Bought a new one. Firmer, darker mine. Then I opened my laptop and got to work. Business had been going well for a while. The consulting firm was steady, my clients were loyal, and referrals were growing. But I'd kept it small on purpose. Told myself it was manageable, that I didn't need more stress. But maybe I'd been hiding, too. Afraid to grow too big because part of me still thought I didn't deserve success if I didn't have a picture-perfect family to go with it. That changed now. I reached out to 2 colleagues I trusted. Asked if they wanted in on an expansion project. Within 2 weeks, we had a blueprint for a scaled-up version of the firm. New branding. New service tiers. A mentorship program for younger consultants. I reinvested a chunk of my savings into building a lean, agile backend. I hired a web designer, a ghostwriter for blogs, and even booked a speaking gig, my first in 3 years. Something shifted in me. I stopped treating my life like a placeholder. It wasn't a waiting room for someone else's approval anymore. And that confidence started to ripple into everything. I reconnected with a friend from college, Tessa, who I hadn't spoken to in years. We'd had a brief moment once, back in school, but it fizzled out under the weight of bad timing and bigger insecurities. Now, she was divorced too. A single mom. A painter. She had this laugh that didn't ask for permission and a way of saying my name like it mattered. We started small. Coffee, long walks, occasional calls that turned into hours. No pressure. No expectations. Just 2 people with scars and stories and the patience to listen to each other. She never asked about my family. Never prodded. But when I mentioned the gala, she smiled and said, "You're going to look like someone they'll regret forgetting." And I did. That tux wasn't just fabric. It was armor. But even as I rebuilt, even as my life started to feel like mine again, there was a part of me that hadn't quite healed. The part that still remembered being 10 years old and watching Aunt Margaret beam at me from across a Thanksgiving table because I'd learned how to set the cutlery correctly. The part that remembered her saying, "You're going to make a wonderful man one day, Kyle." That boy still wanted to ask what happened. But that boy also knew better now. He'd learned that some people only love the version of you that fits their script. The moment you change, the moment you deviate from the lines they wrote for you in their heads, you become expendable. And I had deviated. I had grown. And now I was rising. I kept the plan for the gala quiet. Didn't even tell Tessa. I wanted the moment to unfold in silence. Clean. I didn't want to gloat. I just wanted them to feel, for once, what it was like to be unseen. But on the inside, I was still bracing for something, for someone to ruin it, for a message to come in, for the charity board to reverse the seating plan, for some last-minute betrayal to snatch it all away. Years of conditioning made it hard to believe I was allowed to win. The night before the gala, I got one last text from Colleen. "Hey, just wanted to say I hope you're doing well. Haven't heard from you in a while. Things have been hectic. Looking forward to seeing you at the gala. Margaret's table is going to be amazing this year. Front row, obviously. No apology. No mention of the newsletter. No acknowledgement of the erasure. Just a reminder of how things were supposed to be." I stared at the screen for a moment, then locked my phone and set it on the counter. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned on some music, opened a bottle of wine, lit a candle, and stood at my window, watching the city lights flicker like stars rearranging themselves, making new constellations for a story that was finally mine. The stage was set. The curtain was about to rise. And the people who wrote me out of the script had no idea they were about to play supporting roles in my quiet, devastating comeback. The week of the gala was strangely calm. No last-minute drama, no guilt-tripping texts, no surprise phone calls from long-lost relatives suddenly rediscovering family ties. Just silence. A vacuum. The same kind they left me in all those years, when they quietly forgot to invite me, forgot to ask how I was doing, forgot to care. But this time, the silence didn't hurt. It was a blank canvas. And I had the brush. There's a certain thrill in planning something they'll never see coming. Not out of malice, but precision. This wasn't petty. It wasn't about vengeance for the sake of ego. It was about balance. About restoring something they had disrupted long ago. My sense of self. My seat at the table. Or, more accurately, my power to remove theirs. The gala had always been Aunt Margaret's pride. It wasn't even her charity. Just an event she clung to like it was a status symbol. Every year, she'd post her arrival on Facebook like it was the Oscars. The dress. The makeup. The smug caption. Grateful to support a cause that matters with the best people in the best seats. She collected gala photos the way some people collect teacups, fragile and overpriced, but displayed like trophies. So I knew the only way to reach her, to really reach her, was through that world. Not with shouting or confrontation. That would only give her more lines to use. Kyle's always been so emotional. He never could handle a disagreement. You know how divorce makes people bitter. No, I needed to play her game. And beat her at it. Quietly. Gracefully. With a knife made of velvet. First, I triple-checked the arrangements with Gwen. She was sharp as ever. "You've got all 12 VIP tables reserved in your name," she said over the phone, sounding both amused and mildly alarmed. "Every name on your list has been reassigned to general admission waitlist. Some of them might not even get in, depending on turnout." "Perfect," I said. "And you're sure you want to stay anonymous?" "Yes," I said. "I don't want the donation public. But the tables, let them guess." She chuckled. "You've got a streak of drama in you, kid. Only when it's earned." Next, I made sure the seating chart was displayed prominently at the entrance. Gwen was happy to oblige. She told me they'd have a printed board with everyone's name and table number, sorted by category, VIP at the top, general admission in smaller font below. My family would be able to read their new place in the hierarchy as soon as they walked through the door. I also requested a small touch of irony. Place cards at the tables. Each one embossed with gold foil. Nothing flashy, just initials. My initials. OC. That would be the only clue to the patron behind their confusion. Not enough to point fingers, but enough to keep them wondering. Enough to plant doubt in the one place they'd never admit it lived, their pride. I didn't tell Tessa what I'd done, not yet. But I did invite her. It was the first time I'd ever brought someone to a formal event since my divorce. I was nervous. She wasn't. She showed up at my apartment the afternoon of the gala in a soft black dress and a pair of red heels that looked like they could command a courtroom. Her curls were pinned back, and she carried herself like someone who had nothing to prove, my favorite kind of strength. "You're staring," she said as I opened the door. "You look—" I tried to find a word that didn't sound like a line. "Like they'll remember you." She smiled. "That's the idea." I told her almost everything on the ride there, not the donation itself, but the family history. The slow exile. The group chat. The newsletter. The years of being erased with a smile. She listened without interrupting. Just nodded occasionally, eyes fixed out the window. Then, softly, she said, Sometimes the best revenge isn't making them feel what you felt. It's letting them feel less than they made you believe you were. I nodded. Exactly. The gala was being held at the Hamilton Civic Hall, a glass-walled, high-ceiling venue with a sprawling view of the river. The parking lot alone was a parade of status symbols, luxury sedans, vintage cars. One guy who clearly thought pulling up in a stretch limo would impress the wrong kind of crowd. We arrived 10 minutes early. Just enough time to watch. The lobby was buzzing. Velvet ropes, champagne flutes, photographers snapping candid shots of board members and influencers pretending not to pose. The massive seating chart was displayed near the registration table, backlit and bold. I watched as people gathered around it, fingers tracing the names, scanning for recognition and ego boosts. Then I saw them arrive. Colleen first. Her husband trailed behind, adjusting his cufflinks like it was the most important moment of his year. Then Ashley, with 3 of her Pilates crew, all perfectly coordinated in mismatched metallic gowns and fake laughter. Aunt Margaret was last. She arrived like royalty. Floor-length satin, a shawl that probably cost more than my first car. And her husband, quiet as always, hovering behind her like a footnote. They didn't see me. Not yet. They went straight to the board. I watched Colleen's face change first. A flicker of confusion, then mild concern, then the half-laugh of someone trying to pretend she's not panicking. Ashley leaned in, pointed at something, then frowned. I could practically hear her say, "That can't be right." Aunt Margaret stood still. Her finger hovered just above the board. I knew exactly where she was looking. The top row. The empty space where M. Campbell plus family should have been. And instead, in that space, 12 VIP tables, labeled only reserved, each with a small monogram card, OC. She stepped back, looked around the room, and for the first time in my adult life, I saw Aunt Margaret lose composure. Not dramatically, not loudly, but in the small, telling way that really matters. Her eyes scanned every face a little too fast. Her hand twitched on her purse. She leaned toward the coordinator with a tone I could recognize even through glass. Firm, fake polite, demanding. They were told the truth. Their seats were reassigned. The VIP tables were purchased by an anonymous donor. General admission was overbooked. They'd be placed on the wait list, but no guarantees. No guarantees. Those words had never applied to her. Until now. Tessa slipped her arm through mine and whispered, "You ready?" I nodded. We entered the hall like any other guests. No fanfare, just grace. We were ushered straight to table 3, front row, center left. The lights bounced off the silver place settings. Everything glowed. And just before I sat down, I turned. Aunt Margaret was still in the lobby. Standing beside her were Colleen and Ashley, flustered and uncertain. Their names were not called. Their table was not ready. There was no one rushing to fix it. For the first time, they were the ones on the outside looking in. And they didn't even know why. I took my seat, smiled, and waited for the next course to be served, not of food, but of realization. Because this was just the beginning. The music swelled as the lights dimmed, casting a golden glow across the gala hall. Waiters in black vests weaved through the velvet-draped VIP tables, balancing champagne flutes and silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. My table, table 3, was filled with city council members, donors, and local artists. Important people, polished people. But the seat beside me, that one remained empty, reserved for someone who didn't need a name tag. From the corner of my eye, I could see the lobby, specifically, the growing tension at the entrance. Aunt Margaret was still standing at the registration table, clutching her clutch like it held the very last shred of her dignity. Colleen looked like she'd just been told the world had run out of moisturizer, and Ashley was pacing near the photo backdrop with her arms folded tightly across her chest. Gwen, cool as ever, was gently but firmly explaining the situation again. The wait list, the overbooking, the absence of guarantees. "But this is our table," Margaret was saying now, her voice just loud enough to carry. "We are SVP'd months ago. We are not general admission." "I understand that, ma'am," Gwen said smoothly. "But your table was never confirmed. We sent out multiple notices." Margaret turned sharply. "This is a mistake. I'm on the committee. You were invited to participate, yes. But committee privileges do not override ticketing policy." She blinked. Once. Twice. That old, frostbitten composure trying to set in. And then she saw me. I don't know if she recognized me immediately, It had been years since I'd worn anything more formal than a button-down to family gatherings. But I stood out in the crowd. Everyone at table 3 was laughing, toasting, conversing, and I was just sitting there, calm, composed, watching. Tessa leaned in. They're about to blow. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The moment had arrived, and all I had to do was let it breathe. Aunt Margaret marched toward the entrance to the hall, heels tapping like gunfire. Ashley and Colleen followed close behind, fuming. They crossed the threshold just as the event host stepped up to the stage. A tall, elegant woman with a commanding voice welcomed everyone and thanked the evening's most generous and discreet benefactor, an anonymous donor whose contribution allowed the gala to double its outreach this year. She gestured toward the VIP tables with a flourish. My table. A few heads turned. Margaret stopped in her tracks, confusion twisting into dawning realization. She scanned the tables, the centerpieces, the embossed place cards with the initials OC. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She was about to speak when one of the ushers approached and asked if she had a ticket for general admission. We're at capacity for the main hall, he explained. There's overflow seating in the lounge, and we're live streaming the event for waitlisted guests. That was the final crack. I am not watching this from a lounge, she snapped. Do you know who I am? Tessa sipped her drink beside me. They always say that right before they're escorted out. The usher, clearly trained for exactly this level of drama, kept his expression neutral. I do, ma'am. And I apologize for the inconvenience. The next few minutes were deliciously uncomfortable. Margaret tried to speak to someone on the board. No one came. Colleen tried to guilt Gwen into making an exception. Ashley tried the influencer angle. Do you know how many people follow me? Which landed with a thud. Eventually, they were guided toward the side lounge, past guests who were now murmuring quietly behind cocktail glasses. They didn't sit. Not right away. They hovered in the back, glancing toward the stage, occasionally whispering and pointing. Then, at last, they gave in. They sat. Not in the front row. Not near the donors. Not even near the free bar. But in the shadows of their own fading influence. The program continued. Stories were shared. Lives changed by the charity's work. Applause. Speeches. Gratitude. Then came the raffle. Margaret had lived for the raffle. She won once, back in 2017, and never let anyone forget it. She'd framed the certificate. Aunt Margaret always wins something, she'd say. It's just the energy I bring. This year's top prize? A luxury weekend package at the Riverfront Grand Hotel, my building. The announcer pulled the winning number. I could see Margaret clutching her ticket from across the room, her posture stiff and ready to stand. And the winner is Table 3, Seat 6. That was Tessa. She blinked, surprised. Laughed. Did you rig this? She whispered. Nope, I said, grinning. Just karma. As she went to accept the prize, the crowd clapped, and I glanced back toward the lounge. Margaret wasn't clapping. She was staring at me. And this time, there was no confusion, no denial, just quiet understanding. The pieces had locked into place. The donation, the seats, the initials. It wasn't just chance. It was me. After the event ended, the guests trickled out slowly, basking in their little moments of glamour and charity. I lingered, chatting with a board member, accepting a quiet thank you from Gwen, and making sure to shake hands with the speakers. Then I turned to leave, and there they were, waiting near the exit. Margaret, Colleen, Ashley, each one with a different flavor of fury on their face. Why? Margaret asked flatly. No greeting. No pretense. I raised an eyebrow. Why what? You did this. I reserved some tables. Made a donation. Supported a cause I care about. Colleen stepped forward. You embarrassed us. No, I said calmly. You did that. I just gave you the stage. Ashley scoffed. You think this makes you better than us? I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only they could hear. No, I think this shows you who I've always been. Someone you pushed out because he didn't fit your mold. Someone you erased because his life didn't look like yours. Someone you thought you could exile quietly while sipping sparkling cider and talking about family values. Margaret's voice trembled, not with sadness but with controlled rage. You've humiliated this family. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. No. I held up a mirror. You just didn't like the reflection. They had no response. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out into the night. The city lights soft against the skyline. The the sound of distant music still humming behind me. Tessa was waiting near the car, wrapped in her coat, her eyes bright. "Well?" she asked. "Feel good?" I exhaled. Not a sigh, a release. "Yeah," I said. "It feels finished." Because revenge, when done right, doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to ruin. It simply reclaims. And as we drove away, the gala fading behind us, I realized something. They had taken my seat at the table once. But now, I own the whole damn room. And I never looked back.